Hello everyone, welcome to this video. In this video I'll be reacting to one of the early uploads from the YouTube channel The Game Theorists, and I hope that you are a fan of their work as well because I'm a huge fan of their work. If you do like their video, go ahead and go to their videos and just say hi. If you do like my video, please consider to like, share and subscribe, and comment down below if you have anything to share with us. Thank you so much. Subscribe please. Anyways, thank you so much. Let's go on to the video. This video was like back in 2012, so yeah. Ronnie! The emoji, the emoji.
Video games are unique in that they often define genres based only on mechanics.
That's true.
In movies, we don't define a genre based solely on the editing style or cinematography, however, we essentially do the equivalent with games. Games like House of the Dead Overkill and Pokemon Snap, which are completely different in tone and feel, can be comfortably lumped into the same genre, while movies such as House of the Dead and Pokemon 2000 probably wouldn't find themselves bumping shoulders on the shelves of a rental store. Those still exist, right? So why do we see them?
Ooh, that burn! Ouch!
Well, video games are an interactive medium, so it only makes sense to categorize them based on how we interact with them. Also, way back in the past when video games began to get sorted into these genres, games as a whole rarely ever evoked any kind of deep emotion in the player, and they rarely had any sort of compelling narrative when compared to literature or films. Really, the mechanics were the best subject to use when categorizing them back then. The classification worked great at the time, but if you fast forward to today, most of them come off as a bit archaic. In writing, you sometimes have structures that inform the mechanics, such as the case with haiku or sonnets, but that's not defining a genre, it's defining a structure. I'd say our current video game genres define more of a structure than they actually do a genre. I'd play Limbo for different reasons than I'd play New Super Mario Bros. Wii. They're both platformers, sure, but the word platformer doesn't necessarily clue me in on the feelings each game will evoke, like the terms romantic comedy or chick flick do. Now, you could just use adjectives to help define genres such as ambient platformer or comical FPS, and that works pretty well, but I'm not really here to try to come up with a new system to categorize games.
Then why do you spend a minute and a half talking about it?
I just wanted to highlight the bad when it comes to game genres so you could have a fuller appreciation when I point out the good. And believe me, there is some good out there.
It should be reversed. It should be, believe me, there is some bad out there.
One video game genre that rises above the rest is
survival horror.
The term
survival horror
not only describes the mechanics of a game, but also the feelings the game will evoke when you play it. And the mechanics actually...
I'm sorry? I missed out.
The term
survival horror
not only describes the mechanics of a game, but also the feelings the game will evoke when you play it. And
repetition for emphasis. That's true.
And the mechanics actually help to evoke that feeling. Let me explain.
survival horror
Games are meant to unsettle the player. They can do this with bleak, foreboding imagery, creepy sounds, traditional jump scares, and the like. However, they can achieve this with the raw mechanics of the game as well. When you play a survival horror game, you don't expect it
Survival horror. How does he do this? Survival horror.
to just breeze right through it. You expect merely to survive until the end. You'll likely have to ration your ammo and health items and carefully manage your inventory. This just adds to the tension when you're worrying about whether or not you should use the screen up right now or wait to use it later. When you hear the term
survival horror
you get a good idea of what the mechanics are going to be like and the frame of mind the game will likely put you in. The mechanics, as well as the visuals and sound, will also put you in that frame of mind collectively. That's what I meant earlier.
survival horror
Can describe the mechanics of the game.
Not that I think every single time he said survival horror is different. Like, he didn't just use one survival horror and just copy paste every single time for his survival horror. During the periods in which he said survival horror. Yeah, that is placing a lot of emphasis and a lot of dedication into his work. Respect that, man. Respect that.
As well as the headspace the game will put you in. and the mechanics can help put you in that headspace. You usually don't see this sort of thing in other genres. Now, another cool facet about horror games is that they have a slight edge over other mediums when it comes to conveying horror. This is because the player is actively involved in the horror happening on screen. It's not Laurie Strode who's getting chased by the killer, it's you. It's not the hero of the film deciding whether or not to use their last bullet to defeat this demon. It's you. As opposed to sitting on your couch telling the actors on screen not to go in there, you, as a player, have to make these choices. Choices that have lasting consequences on your chances of survival. These choices only serve to add to the tension of the situation. Now when a monster suddenly jumps out from around a corner, it's not just scary because it startles you. It's scary because you, as a player, also have to deal with it. Yet another cool fact about
Survival horror.
as a genre is that it's a genre that transcends our current concept of video game genres. What I mean is we have
Survival horror.
FPSs,
Survival horror.
point-and-click adventures, and even RPG.
That was Gaijin Goomba, right? That's good. It's like survival horror. Survival horror.
Among others. It's one of the few video game
Alright, I'm done, please.
genres that actually describes a genre in the traditional sense of the word. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that every survival horror game is a total masterpiece, I'm just saying that the term survival horror is totally awesome when it comes to describing a genre. Survival horror isn't the only horror game genre that can do neat things either. You can have psychological horror games that actively try to mess with the player in ways that movies or books can't quite achieve. Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, is a great example. In a lot of horror games, your sanity bar is just a de facto health bar, and as it drains, it just applies some white noise filter over the screen for some creepy effects. Which is cool, but Eternal Darkness took it a few steps further. As your character loses their grip on reality, they might see monsters that aren't really there. The walls and ceiling might begin to ooze blood, and your character could even find themselves walking on the ceiling. And the game doesn't stop there, it actually goes out of its way to creep the player out, even if it has to break the fourth wall to do it. When you're low on sanity, the game isn't above using skewed camera angles, fake error messages, and more. It's totally possible for a player to go all the way through this game without seeing all the sanity effects that are packed into it. This segues into another aspect.
Admittedly, Eternal Darkness does suffer from its age, but it's definitely worth a look if you haven't played it yet. You played it before, so that means to say that it didn't age well.
Horror games can have that are difficult to achieve with books or film. Once you watch a horror movie once or twice, a fair amount of the scares, even the jump scares, tend to lose their impact. Games, however, can be procedurally or randomly generated to great effect. There are plenty of horror games that randomly generate the scares, so you can play the game tens of times and never have the same experience twice. I think a good example of this is Slender: The 8 Pages. Unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably heard of this game. Love it or hate it, the random placement of the pages and the dynamic teleportation of Slender Man make for some pretty good scares and high replayability. The concept of horror is something that transcends cultures and media. While it can help to inform mechanics, it is not bound by them. This is the reason why horror games are some of the few genres in video games that accurately describe a genre in the traditional sense, and why it lends itself so well to interactivity. One more point before I let you go. Have you ever noticed that most enduring horror games heavily feature some sort of mystery or intrigue? You're usually dumped into the game with less than a handful of all the puzzle pieces that make up the plot, and you often get the feeling that something greater is going on in the background. You wander through the game, picking up clues, but even once the game is beat, rarely are all the blanks ever filled in. This common thread amongst horror games isn't an accident. It's this that gives you a reason to brave the horrors of the game. You want to find out exactly what's going on and where you fit into all of it, no matter how horrific the answers may be. A part of you is scared, a part of you wants to stop, but a greater part of you wants to press forward through the danger and unravel the mystery, illuminate the unknown. It's this mental push-pull that helps draw the player in and keeps them coming back for more. But even once you get to the end, you're still usually left with questions. If answers are supposed to be a reward for braving the horrors, why leave important questions unanswered? You got through the game, you deserve those answers, right? Why would a developer do this to you? Is it laziness? Or maybe they're just leaving room for a sequel.
Oh, maybe it's room for a sequel.
Or maybe it's because sometimes what scares us the most is the unknown.
My goodness. My goodness. I'm going to replay this again so that I'll be prepared, okay?
For a sequel. Or maybe it's because Sometimes, what scares us the most is the unknown. Oh, come on. You knew it was going to happen.
Come on, Ronnie. That's a bit naughty of you, you know. A bit naughty, yeah. A bit playful. Aye. But look at where I was prepared. I was prepared the second time. I was prepared. It's like survival horror. It's like, yeah. So I was like, I was like, I'm not afraid. Come on, bring your best shot. Having said that, it was very knowledgeable and it was very educational. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ronnie.